If you look into book 3 of Metamorphoses, you will see the first section deals with Cadmus' story. Right? Cadmus' story is about begins with Europa's kidnapping by Zeus, or what can you say, Jupiter. What we find here is that after this kidnapping, the most important thing that is happening over here is the eviction of Cadmus from his own country, from his own place. And what we find here is that everything is going against him. But fortunately, what we find that something better is coming in his way, where he is able to establish his own place. So you might call this person to be lucky, to be ousted from his own country, from his own place, from his father's place, and finding a new place to live. Right? It might be a very uh, enhancing thing. Why? Because you are finding your own country. So the part which is titled Actaeon, it is today's focus. We will today focus with the fate of Actaeon and Semele. Okay, so why it is so? Today I will be giving you a brief outline of this story. Who are Actaeon and Semele? They are daughter and grandchildren. Okay, grandchild. So what we find here is that this description you can see in the PPT, that what is who is what. So what we find here is that this life, not just Cadmus's, our life is such where we face ups and downs, right? At one moment we are in a happy state, at another moment we do not like what is going on in our life, and we feel like committing suicide, right? Or ending our life by whatever means. But in spite of forming a new place, in spite of forming a new country, what we see? We see that this person could have been called the most happiest person or the most lucky person, but Ovid goes on to say that you cannot consider a person lucky unless he is dead and he is truly buried, or he is resting in grave. So until the person is dead and his body is laid in grave, you cannot call a person to be truly happy. Clear? Why he is saying so? He is saying so because Cadmus had found a place where he would establish his own kingdom. But his family is plagued. His family is plagued by several mishaps. And these mishaps are by chance. These mishaps are not intended by anyone else, but these are misgivings, these are misfortunes actually. Okay, so the section of Actaeon begins with Thebes had her walls, and Cadmus's exile might have been thought to have brought him nothing but luck. So, Thebes had her walls. That means Cadmus had established Thebes and put a boundary wall against Thebes. So he has been exiled and he has found a new place. So it is like you are removed from the class, you are thrown out of your class, and you get up from where you have ended and establish a business which is world winning. Okay, so everyone would have thought it has actually been helpful for him after his removal from his own country. What he did? he married Harmonia, who is the daughter of Mars and Venus. Okay, a most prestigious match which had yielded a brood of numerous sons and daughters and much loved grandsons. Clear? So, what we find here is that anyone would be jealous of him. Okay, anyone would be jealous of him because of his stature, because of the heights he has uh, uh, traded into. Okay, because he was ousted from his own country and now he has married the daughter of Mars and Venus, and he was living a more prestigious and happy life because he has numerous sons and daughters and several uh, grandsons, okay, who grew into fine young men. But never forget the ancient saying, wait for the final day, call no man happy until he is dead and his body is laid to rest in grave. So, the writer, so the poet, is bringing in the famous saying where he says that until the end of your days, until your final day, you should not call a person happy. Until that person is dead, until that person is rest in grave, you should not call him happy, because the turn of events does not take much time. Okay, the disaster that would be uh, within his family will not take much time. Okay, prosperous is so much. Great Cadmus is struck by disaster. So he is struck by disaster. In spite of being so much prosperous, he is prosperous to the extent where a person might want nothing else, nothing more. But yet Cadmus is struck by disaster. And that disaster would be explained in this section that I am displaying now, fate of Actaeon and Semele. Okay, Semele is the daughter of Cadmus and Actaeon is the grandson of Cadmus. ওকে, সো এখানটায় কি বলছে, ফার্স্ট কটা লাইনসে, ফার্স্ট লাইন্সগুলো হচ্ছে ডিসক্রাইব করছে যে এই যে তোমার থেবস রয়েছে, সেই থেবসটাকে ফর্ম করছে ক্যাডমাস. থেবস ইজ ফর্মিং দ্য ওয়ালস অর and the Thebes is being formed, the Thebes country establish করা হচ্ছে. আর সবাই ভাববে বা যে কেউ ভাববে যে ক্যাডমাসকে যে এক্সাইল করা হলো, তাকে যে দেশ থেকে বার করে দেওয়া হলো, সেটা আর কিছুই করেনি, সেটা অ্যাকচুয়ালি তাকে হেল্প করেছে. তাকে হেল্প করেছে কি, ভালো লাক পাওয়ার জন্যে. ওকে, ওয়াই? বিকজ হি ইজ নাও দ্য কিং অফ আ নিউ প্লেস অ্যান্ড অলসো হি হ্যাড ম্যারিড হারমোনিয়া, who is the daughter of Mars and Venus, god and goddesses এর ডটারকে বিয়ে করতে পেরেছে. আর এই যে ম্যাচটা, এটা প্রচণ্ড পরিমাণেই হচ্ছে প্রেস্টিজিয়াস, যেখানটায় তার থেকে অনেক সানস অ্যান্ড ডটার্স হয়েছে. সবাই কীভাবে, সবাই হচ্ছে তাকে জেলাস হবে তার এই অ্যাচিভমেন্টে, রাইট? তাদের গ্র্যান্ড ডটার্স হয়েছে. কিন্তু অভিড কি করছে, অভিড একটা প্রিমনিশন নিয়ে আসছে কি, কোনো লোককে হচ্ছে হ্যাপি বলো না যতক্ষণ না পর্যন্ত সে মারা গেছে আর তার গ্রেভের উপরে যাকে বলে তাকে গ্রেভে পাঠানো হয়েছে, তার অন্তিম কাজ শেষ হয়ে গেছে. ঠিক আছে? সো হোয়াট উই ফাইন্ড হিয়ার ইজ দ্যাট হি ইজ ডিসক্রাইবিং দ্যাট অনলি, হি ইজ ডিসক্রাইবিং দ্যাট দিস শুড নট বি ডান. Why this is so? This would be described in the next section, where I will portray out what is actually happening. Okay, this is called story graph. Okay, this would be helpful for you people. So what is being portrayed over here? The portrayal shows that Cadmus's family is being plagued by what? Plagued by misfortunes. Okay, Cadmus's family is being plagued by misfortunes, and the misfortune starts with Actaeon. Okay, Cadmus's household is plagued by misfortunes because while hunting, his grandson, whose name is Actaeon, stumbles upon a grove where Diana was bathing. Okay, it was a sacred grove where Diana was bathing. I have described you who Diana is and everything. Okay, so what we find here is that what will be the cause? Okay, Diana sees that, and Actaeon was actually in that grove or in that forest for hunting. Okay, he had moved away from his hunting parties. তার সাথে আরো যারা যারা ছিল তাদের থেকে অনেকটা দূরে সরে গেছিল, যারা হাউন্ডস ছিল। হাউন্ডস মানে জানিস শিকারী কুকুর, হান্টিং ডগস। হি ওয়াজ উইথ হিজ হান্টিং ডগস। He had moved far away. He was loitering in the forest and discovered the sacred grove. Okay, Actaeon discovered the sacred grove where Diana, with her companions, she was bathing. And this actually leads to the next section. What? Cadmus's action offends Diana. Okay, and Diana transforms Actaeon into a stag. Okay, and which leads Actaeon to be killed by his own hounds. So the theme of transformation is coming in. Okay, the theme of transformation, the physical transformation, is being shown over here. It shows that Diana, who has been bathing there, who was bathing there, was offended and transforms Actaeon into a stag. তাকে কি করছে? একটা স্ট্যাগে পরিণত করছে। দ্য মেইন থিম যেটা হচ্ছে সমস্ত স্টোরিগুলোকে কানেক্ট করে রাখে, সেটা কি? ট্রান্সফরমেশন, মেটামরফোসিস, রাইট? সো দ্য মেইন থিম উইচ কানেক্টস অল দ্য স্টোরিজ উইদিন this text is actually metamorphosis, right? So what we find here is that this is being done by God's anger, okay, or the goddess's anger. So what we see that the misfortune is brought into the family of Cadmus, and that is why I dealt so long in explaining the Cadmus's family. Okay, so Actaeon is transformed into a stag, and Actaeon's own hounds, that is Actaeon's own hunting dogs, kill him because they are trained to do so. So the hunter becomes hunted, right? যে শিকার করতে এসেছিল সেই কিন্তু মারা গেল, যে শিকারী সেই শিকারে পরিণত হয়ে গেল। Clear? So the hunter becomes hunted. Clear? So this transformation, this view of transformation, this idea of transformation is not a beneficial one, right, as had been in previous cases. This transformation is laden with violence, murderous instinct, and what we find here is that this divine retribution is present over here, and it changes the course of human life. It changes human fate, and that is what is being described over here. Okay, so the misfortune of Cadmus's family has started. So next what we see, Semele, who is Cadmus's daughter, becomes pregnant with Jupiter's child. As I have told you, the character of Jupiter, or Jove to say in Roman mythology, the character of Jupiter is such where Jupiter is very much inclined towards physical attractions and physical involvements with several people. Okay, and what we find here is that Semele is one of them, and Cadmus's daughter Semele is pregnant with Jupiter's child, which would apparently appear to be a very good thing, because she is in some way linked with Jupiter, the chief god. But problem lies in another place. What is the problem? Problem lies with Juno. Why? Because Juno is a person who cannot stand Jupiter's dalliances. ওকে, জুপিটার এই সমস্ত যে কাণ্ড কারখানাগুলো করে বেড়ায় সেইগুলোকে সে সহ্য করতে পারে না। ওকে, and what we find here is that Jupiter's wife Juno is very much vengeful. Okay, so what we find here is that this is no different. This case is no different. In this case also, Juno is filled with rage, filled with anger, because of another dalliance of Jupiter, and in order to take revenge on Semele, Juno disguises herself as an old woman, Bero, B-E-R-O-E. Okay, Juno disguises herself, which is also a transformation, which is also a kind of transformation, which is a disguise, obviously, not in the strictest sense a transformation, but it is a disguise. Juno was filled with rage, anger, and in order to take revenge, what she did, she disguises herself as an old woman who actually takes care of pregnant woman. Okay, so what we find here is that he instills a kind of jealousy within Semele. Okay, সেখানটায় এই যে জেলাসিটা ইনক্লুড করলে, it would be helpful for her to get Semele to do what she wants. Okay, তাহলে অ্যাক্টিয়ানের মারা যাওয়ার পর আরেকটা ঘটনা যেটা ডিসক্রাইব করা হচ্ছে সেখানটায় কি, সেমেলে হচ্ছে ক্যাডমাসের মেয়ে, যে কি করছে, যে হচ্ছে অলরেডি প্রেগনেন্ট হয়ে রয়েছে জুপিটারের ছেলে বাচ্চার সাথে, ছেলেই হবে, যার নাম হচ্ছে ব্যাকাস, এখনো জন্মায়নি তো, তাই চাইল্ড। যাই হোক, অ্যাপারেন্টলি এটা দেখে খুব ভালো মনে হবে যে হ্যাঁ জুপিটারের ছেলে ওই বংশে আসছে, বাট প্রবলেমটা অন্য জায়গায়। কেন? জুনো হচ্ছে এই জিনিসগুলো সহ্য করতে পারে না, এই যে ক্যারেক্টারলেসনেস। ওকে, এই যে ক্যারেক্টারলেসনেস অফ জুপিটার, সেইগুলো সে সহ্য করতে পারে না। ক্লিয়ার? তার জন্যে জুনো রাগে ভর্তি হয়ে যাচ্ছে, আর জুনো কি ডিসাইড করছে যে সে হচ্ছে বদলা নেবে। ক্লিয়ার? সে তাই একটা ওল্ড ওম্যান, যে হচ্ছে মহিলাদের হচ্ছে খেয়াল রাখে প্রেগনেন্সির সময়, নাম BEROE, সে সেই রূপে হচ্ছে সেমিলের কাছে যাচ্ছে। অ্যান্ড what she actually does is that she actually infuses suspicions within Semele of her lover. Okay, she infuses suspicion within Semele, and what we find here is that Juno then recommends her, where she would ask Jupiter to prove any method to prove his constancy, because we know that Jupiter is a person who is very much involved in relationship or a kind of physical relationship with several women, right? So what we find here is that Juno is instigating that point. Juno is harping on that point to infuse within Semele suspicion about her lover. Okay, suspicions on her lover, where Semele would ask for constancy from Jupiter. Okay, so Juno recommends her to adopt a method in which or through which Jupiter would prove that he loves Semele more than anyone else. Clear? And as the suspicion is instilled, it will act as a seed, and that is happening over here. Okay, what does she do? She convinces Semele to ask Jupiter to make love to her with all his power as a god. Okay, in the same way as he makes love to Juno. ওকে, তাহলে এই যে সাসপিশন, এই যে সন্দেহ, খুব মারাত্মক জিনিস। ঠিক আছে, একবার যদি কোনো রিলেশনশিপে সন্দেহ যদি ঢোকে, সেই রিলেশনশিপ আর বাঁচার নয়। তা সবার জন্য বলছি, তোদের জন্য স্পেশালি। ঠিক আছে, সবে তো জীবন শুরু করেছিস, জানি না তোদের কি অবস্থা, কিন্তু জীবনে এটা মাথায় রাখবি যে একবার যদি রিলেশনশিপে যদি একবার সন্দেহ ঢুকে যায়, তাহলে সেই রিলেশনশিপ ভাঙতে ভাঙতে যাবেই। দাঁত দেখেছিস তো? অবভিয়াসলি দাঁত দেখেছিস। দাঁতে যদি একবার ক্যাভিটি লাগে বা দাঁতে যদি একবার পোকা লাগে, ঠিক আছে, সেই দাঁত ক্ষয় হতে শুরু করলে কোনো পুটিংয়ে কোনো কাজ হয় না। পুটিং করো, যাই করো, সে আস্তে আস্তে ওই ফাটল সরু হয়ে 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 ফাটতে ফাটতে একদিন না একদিন সেই দাঁতটাকে শেষ করবেই। সিমিলারলি এই রিলেশনশিপেও তাই। ইফ সাসপিশন ইজ দেয়ার, if suspicion lasts, then what will happen? It will destroy the relationship. As I said, this example of teeth in, what can you say, in Bengali. So what I find here is that this example shows that this person is installing, Juno is installing suspicions within Semele. Okay, what we find here is that it is like teeth. Okay, once cavity attacks it, there is no way of getting out of it. Once cavity starts, if it has put an imprint on it, even it filling it, even it any kind of treatment will not help it. It will destroy the teeth ultimately. So it is best to use precaution, to use any kind of toothpaste to save the teeth. Okay, any ad could be included over here, but no one has sponsored me, so I will not name any toothpaste. Just joking. So that is the thing, that you should not allow suspicion to enter your relationship. Similarly, you should not allow any kind of cavity creating thing to enter your mouth. Okay, or if it enters, you should wash it. Okay, even suspicion enters, you should wash it away. Okay, you should not entertain it. Okay, so that is what is happening. That should have happened, but it is not happening. Okay, Juno convinces Semele that he should ask Jupiter to love with all the power that he has as God. Okay, God হিসাবে জুপিটারের যত পাওয়ার রয়েছে, সেই পুরো পাওয়ারটা দিয়ে সে কি করবে? লাভ করবে সেমেলিকে। যেমন করে সে জুনোকে লাভ করে, ততটা পাওয়ার দিয়েই সে সেমেলিকে লাভ করবে। প্রবলেমটা কোথায়? The problem lies in another place. When Juno and Jove, that is Jupiter, are making love, they are both gods and goddesses. They can withstand the power of each other, right? But when a normal human being is facing the power of Jupiter, he or she would not be able to face that power or restrain or withstand that power. Okay, so that's the trick that Juno is applying. And Semele, who is actually jealous because um, her lover Jupiter is actually a person who has been involved with several other people and has a wife. So she is instigating the suspicion, and also what we find, she is uh, being attacked by jealousy. Okay, jealousy একটা জিনিস যেটা কি করে, which actually destroys our relationship. If you read Othello, you will see. Okay, so let's move on. And when we see that Semele is thus convinced, okay, and she asks or gets a reluctant promise from Jupiter, and the promise is an unspecified gift. And if you remember your Iliad classes and everything, if Jupiter or Zeus promises, he will be giving that. He will give that. Okay. एक बार जो मैंने कमिटमेंट कर दी तो मैंने दूसरों की भी नहीं सुनता, और what मैं खुद की भी नहीं सुनता. That is Jupiter's policy. Okay, so something like that. So what we find here is that Semele is thus deceived, and she obtains an unspecified gift from Jupiter. And Jupiter at first was not very willing to give that promise, but she makes a request, and Jupiter cannot go back on his word. So what we find here is that Jupiter was not very convinced with that. When she asks that he should make love with her with all his power. Okay, when Jupiter returns to Semele in a later stage, when Jupiter returns, Semele asks for that gift. What is the gift? As said by this person, Juno, that he should make love with Semele with the same power that Jupiter had used or uses with Juno while love making. Okay, as because Jupiter had promised, he does so. He makes love to her with all his power. She cannot withstand the effulgence of his lightning, and she is burned down to the ashes. Okay, in his presence only. And Jupiter brings their son Bacchus to full term in his thigh. So this is the birth of Bacchus. Okay, so Jupiter takes the unborn child from Semele, as because he was a product, as Bacchus was a product of God and human being. He was not born. He was taken within the thighs of Jupiter, and he was nurtured there. Okay, and what we find, by doing so, Jupiter gives birth to Bacchus from his thigh. Later Bacchus was nurtured by several nymphs and other things. We will go to that. So this is the fate of Actaeon and Semele, and the fate of Cadmus's family that I was talking about. And that is why a person who is not dead and he is not in his graves, you cannot consider that person to be happy by considering only one instance. Okay, that is what is being described over here. Clear? Understood?